Finn and Jake's Adventure is a game that popped up on Steam recently. It is an Adventure Time licensed game. It uses characters, assets, voices and jokes from its universe. The game is a 3D hack and slay game in which you beat up enemies from the original series. You will receive help from all characters in the series, going from Princess Bubblegum up to Marceline and all other minor characters as well. You play as Jack or as Finn. You can change that in-game by pressing the Z key. The other characters usually do not help during combat, but they level up at the same time. You can also acquire power-ups with money, and your level does not only make you stronger, but also upgrade your weapon. But it is a licensed game after all. Is it any good? Can it deliver? And most importantly, what audience does it cater to? Let's try to make this short, shall we? The game has some nice parts which are definitely worth looking at. At first, the game just throws you into the fray with very little explaining. That is usually when you glance at the tools the developer left for you. It's when you realize that the game itself is very refined. The visuals look pretty good, the game is bug-free, responsive, and the weird special abilities from your friends usually come without a stupid glitch. There has been some intensive caretaking and you can feel it. Talking about the visuals. As the game isn't in a cartoon style such as the series it is based on, but in 3D, the visuals could fail fairly easily because of that. However, they do not. The original style is somewhat kept, even within the 3D look, but other than that, it looks gorgeous, and it's fun to run through the levels to simply enjoy the visuals. A big part of the refinement is also the enemy variation. It is just too much to put it into the first sentence and leave it at that. The amounts of different enemies is insane. While you see some old enemies from the first couple of levels also later, there's almost a new type of enemy in every single stage. The end bosses are also known characters from the series, such as the Frost King. And as enemy variation, I don't only mean different skins, I also mean different attack patterns and behaviors. Now I mentioned that your friends help you, and they do that with scrolls. During your adventure you collect scrolls. At first you don't know what they do, but if you use them, something happens. It could change Finn and Jake to Fiona and Cake, or summon Marceline to play a riff and make all enemies dance. It could even summon Lady Rainicorn, who carries you around and even flies you over islands so you can take a faster or shorter path. The amount of scrolls is huge too. Not only because what scrolls you get is randomized, but also because you cannot obtain all scrolls from the beginning of the game. Some unlock later, like Frozen Ninja Stars. Now, the game does have some mistakes. While they are fewer in number, they are also more significant overall. First of all, I said how cool the levels look. And yeah, they do. But the design is boring. While the same assets aren't repeated all the time, there's very little you can actually explore. There's also a very distinct lack of direction. Nobody ever tells you where to go, which would be good if there would be more on the great map to explore, and sometimes there's just nothing except for some random chests which turn out to be monsters. While other worlds usually have a different pattern of their level design, it doesn't matter. Inside their own world it's mostly the same. And lastly, the Keeper's quests are usually boring and useless. If you do them, you get nothing from them. Adventure Time is a somewhat complicated but still very accessible license. You can easily pull off great stories from it, especially because you can just invent more into it without it seeming completely out of place, just because all the characters are so diverse to begin with. However, instead of doing that, this game does not have a lot of story. While there is a story, it gains very little exposition. Actually, let me rephrase that. There are 4 worlds, and at the start and the end of every world you get a 1-minute cutscene and some exposition about it. That's it. During the 1 to 3 hours long worlds, you get no story whatsoever. And this is my personal biggest turn-off. While it's fun to mash myself through 100 enemies with special attacks from this license, I am not the biggest Adventure Time fan, and because of that, the license itself does not carry the game for me to a point where I can say that I do not care about the story. The original series has some beautiful sounds and music pieces. This game has a loop or two per world and loops that all the time. It's not bad, but it gets tedious. It's also done in an 8-bit style, which just doesn't fit into the 3D graphic and universe itself. Also, nobody except Jake and Finn actually talks, except for making their squeaky noises. And lastly, you only have 2 attacks, light and heavy attacks. All other attacks come from your special abilities, which are all consumables. Leveling up your weapon doesn't help, it only gives you a stat. For example, you drop more gold, or you do a slightly damage over time. The gameplay gets a little stale during the end of the game, but for all it's worth, the game isn't complete garbage. I mean, it's refined very well, the license was underused and the story wasn't there, but except for that, the game works as intended. This isn't the kind of game that would cater to the grown-up audience of Adventure Time, as there's a distinct lack of story. But if you have a nephew, a daughter, or a son who is into Adventure Time and young enough to not care about a complex story just yet, this game is for him. Or if you don't simply care about the story at all, then this game could also be made for you. Now, it's not very expensive, it's actually quite cheap. €9.99 gets you around 9 hours of fun with the Adventure Time license. Regardless of the outcome of this review, I had some fun with this game and I don't regret buying it. This game gets a 5 out of 10. Now please remember to like and subscribe if you didn't feel your time wasted. Also, I love to hear criticism. Just use the comment section below and tell me what I did wrong or what I could do better next time. Have a great Easter. You're watching Aftermath Reviews and this is Good Old Nighty.